Welcome to today's news wrap up. Let's dive right into the top stories making headlines today. During a heated Oval Office meeting, Vladimir Zelensky clashed with U.S. leaders, including President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance, over a minerals deal and Ukraine's approach to peace efforts. Zelensky's confrontational behavior led to a fallout, with Trump eventually cutting the meeting short. Secretary of State Marco Rubio criticized Zelensky for his antagonistic approach, suggesting that it undermined potential peace negotiations. And the mainstream media, of course, is taking Zelensky's side. It's crazy how they're all echoing the same thing. But Zelensky later expressed partial regret for the incident, while also emphasizing the importance of U.S. support in Ukraine's struggle against Russia, despite his attempts to repair relations. Well, he never really officially apologized. But the fallout has raised doubts about his commitment to achieving a peace deal. I don't think he wants peace. I believe the globalists egged him on to act like he acted. I mean, we have Susan Rice and Victoria Nuland and the usual suspects coming out beforehand, basically telling him to act like this. And a lot of people are believing that they went against the Logan Act by talking about this with Zelensky. I might do a separate video on that, but that's a whole nother story. The National Endowment for Democracy, or NED, a U.S.-funded organization promoting global democracy, has announced that its funding has been unexpectedly frozen. This freeze, which the NID argues should have been exempt from a foreign aid pause, has led to the suspension of operations affecting nearly 2,000 global partners and resulting in staff furloughs. Y'all know me, I'm all for it. The NED, primarily funded by Congress, plays a role in activities that were previously carried out covertly by the CIA, such as supporting what they call pro-democracy groups and opposing regimes. We know what that means, regime change. Critics have long debated the organization's influence and methods, with examples of its involvement in regime change efforts in regions like Latin America. The funding freeze raises questions about its future and the broader implications for U.S. foreign policy initiatives. We need to leave these countries alone and worry about fixing the United States. I'm all for it. Y'all know that. Democratic Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has asked Attorney General Pam Bondi for clarification on whether she is under investigation for hosting a webinar on Friday, February 12th, aimed at what they called educating migrants about their legal rights when interacting with U.S. immigration authorities. What they were really telling them was how to evade U.S. immigration authorities is what was really going on. And the DOJ doesn't have a responsibility to tell you if you're under investigation or not. Most of the time, they're not going to tell you if you're under investigation. But if you did nothing wrong, what are you worried about, AOC? But the so-called webinar titled Know Your Rights drew criticism from Board Czar Tom Homan, who claimed it warranted a Department of Justice investigation. Ocasio-Cortez, however, asserted that such actions by the government could suppress free speech and violate the First Amendment. You don't have a right to tell people how to evade police. I mean, come on. She emphasized the importance of providing accurate information to the public, especially during uncertain times, and requested a response by March 5th to address these concerns. She got a deadline. Critics of the situation have pointed out the broader implications of free speech and governmental accountability. Again, I don't think that has anything to do with free speech. Teaching people that's criminals how to evade police is not free speech. Hundreds of protesters gathered at Maine state capitol to express dissatisfaction with Governor Janet Mills over her stance on transgender athletes and female sports. The protest, organized by a local citizen, highlighted opposition to Mills' refusal to comply with President Trump's executive order banning transgender athletes from keep competing in women's sports. Mills has mentioned her position, stating she is adhering to the state and federal laws, and responded to Trump's threats of withholding federal funding by saying, quote, "See you in court." Despite growing public discontent and a petition with over 23,000 signatures calling for her recall, Maine lacks a mechanism to remove a governor from office. Mills, who has been in office since 2019, is expected to complete her term in January 2027. Wow. The Georgia Senate has initiated a resolution to investigate Stacey Abrams and the New Georgia Project, a voting rights organization she funded, following the group's admission to campaign finance violations during her 2018 gubernatorial run. These violations included undisclosed campaign contributions and expenditures totaling millions. What's up with these Democrats and their money laundering and fraud? The resolution also calls for an investigation into a $2 billion federal grant awarded to Power Forward Communities, another nonprofit associated with Abrams. Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones emphasized the need for accountability, stating that no one is above the law. The inquiry signifies an intensified effort to scrutinize Abrams' activities and potential misuse of funds. Notice we haven't heard anything from her as of late. She is definitely going down for the corrupt things that she's been doing over the years. But it's par for the course of the Democrat Party. Max Primorik, former COO of USAID, revealed that over 95% of the agency's staff are Democrats, and the majority of its funding has gone to far-left NGOs. He criticized the allocation of taxpayer money to organizations opposing capitalism, democracy, NATO, and Christianity. I got no problem with people opposing NATO, I would say. Primorik highlighted examples like South Africa, which has received billions in aid, but remains aligned with China and opposes the U.S. at the UN. He also pointed out that countries like Mozambique and Tanzania, major aid recipients, have conducted military exercises with China's People Liberation Army, raising concerns about the effectiveness of U.S. foreign aid in advancing national security interests. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has approved deploying 3,000 additional active duty troops to the southern U.S. border. The troops, primarily from the 2nd Stryker Brigade of the 4th Infantry Division, will bring 20-ton armored Stryker vehicles and include personnel with engineering, intelligence, and public affairs expertise. The division is decision in planning since January aims to bolster efforts to curb illegal immigration and support the administration's border policies. Despite a decline in border crossings since the Trump administration took office, we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. The Hegseth emphasized during a February visit that all options remain on the table to address the issue. The move reflects ongoing measures to strengthen border security. Romanian presidential candidate Kalin Georgescu was arrested following the annulment of his election victory. It was utterly ridiculous. We know that NATO is behind this, but authorities have accused him of campaign finance and weapons violation, as well as creating an organization linked to xenophobic or fascist ideologies. I said, no, I'm NATO. I meant the UN. The UN is behind this. The globalist UN is behind this. And you know, just like they chastised and came after Trump and tried to call him xenophobic and a fascist, they're doing the same thing with this guy who won overwhelmingly in an election. The Constitutional Court invalidated the election results just before a decisive runoff, citing suspicions about Georgescu's unexpected win, given his minimal campaign spending and low polling numbers. So that's the evidence they use right there. That's the evidence. He didn't spend a lot of money and he was polling wrong. But, who trusts the polls? And we know from our own elections that it's not necessarily how much money you spend. Critics argue this reflects broader concerns about democracy in Europe, with Vice President J.D. Vance warned of a threat from within at a recent conference. I mean, and this is exactly what he's talking about. The situation has raised alarm about the potential erosion of democratic values in the region. Like I said, this is proof positive of exactly what J.D. Vance was talking about. The U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis reported a slight 0.3% increase in the Personal Consumption Expenditure Index last month, signaling a gradual slowdown in inflation. Compared to the previous year, the index rose by 2.5% or 2.6% when excluding food and energy costs, aligning with expert expectations. While personal income grew by 0.9% in January, personal spending dropped, raising concerns about declining consumption. Economists remain cautiously optimistic, and that's where I'm at, about inflation trends, but warn of potential challenges, including the impact of proposed tariffs. I'm not really too worried about the tariffs and federal layoffs. President Trump faces pressure to manage these economic factors while addressing the national debt and maintaining public confidence in his policies. President Trump announced a significant decline in illegal border crossings during his first full month back in office, reporting just over 8,000 apprehensions at the U.S.-Mexico border. He declared this as the lowest number in history and highlighted the swift deportation or prosecution of those apprehended. Trump contrasted his achievement with the situation under the previous administration, where hundreds of thousands of legal entries occurred monthly. He credited his administration's policies for effectively securing the border, emphasizing the enforcement of strict penalties for those attempting unlawful entry. That's exactly what is supposed to be happening. The announcement was positioned as a fulfillment of his campaign promise to end illegal immigration. Promises kept already. Wow. Lastly, despicable former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has announced his candidacy for New York City's mayor, marking his return to politics after resigning in 2021 amid multiple allegations of sexual harassment. I mean, he has the audacity to run for office again. In a campaign video, Cuomo highlighted his past so-called accomplishments and emphasized the need for bold leadership to address the city's challenges. Remember how he killed Granny? He lumped all the old people together with sick people that had COVID. And it's just crazy. Like, it's so much dirt we got on this guy. I can't believe he has the audacity to run again. But he framed his decision as a response to a leadership crisis, calling for decisive action to, quote, save New York City. Critics argue that his bid for power is motivated by a desire to oppose President Trump, sparking debate about his intentions and suitability for the role. Well, that's all for today's news wrap up. Stay tuned for more updates, and don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for the latest in news. Until next time, peace.